They moved our flag back to the same position, so we'll start with the pledge tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Going to call the meeting to order at 6:31. And tonight we have something special, and we have some special guests here tonight. So thank you all for being here. We are going to start with what is a project hearing. So I'm going to call that meeting to order. The project hearing is, I'm just going to read the, start from the beginning again. The next item on the agenda is for the board to hold a project hearing on the proposed project. If you are interested in speaking at the hearing, make sure you have signed the sign-in sheet, which would include your name and address. After presentation by the administration and its advisors, there will be an opportunity for the public to make comments about the project. At the hearing, we will ask that each person limit their comments to 3 minutes and that the topic be limited to the proposed project under consideration. The notice of this hearing is published as legally required. At this time, I'm going to ask Jane Herndon to explain the purpose of this hearing.
Good evening.
Welcome, Jane.
Nice to see you all. To all of you. I'm not sure where the best place to say it is, but pursuant to Indiana Code 2026-737, before a school corporation may spend money on a project to build, alter, repair a school building, it's required to hold a public hearing. And at the public hearing, you'll hear an explanation of the potential value of the project. And we will talk about maximum financial terms. So the school board will keep control of that project. They can always borrow less than what's talked about tonight, but they can't borrow more without starting this process.
All right. So now I'm going to turn the floor over to our superintendent, Emily Tracy, to talk about the process for determining and communicating the project to the community and the need for the project.
Yeah, so we presented a project last month at the board meeting that went over in great detail the two potential middle school projects, one being the secure front entrance of the middle school, and the second being the to cover all of the HVAC at the middle school. Back in 2018, the board charged the leadership to do a facility needs study, and Performance Services was able to conduct that for us. And from the 2018 study, we decided to move forward with a high school HVAC project in the locker rooms. And at that time, the middle school front entrance and HVAC was also a priority at that time, but we chose to do the high school project first. So this past summer, we asked Performance Services to go around to all the facilities again, and the middle school, both those projects goes to the top of that priority list. So at the end of the day, the middle school is the only building within the district that does not have a secure, safe front entrance. And again, the HVAC is long overdue. All right.
So I want to now turn the floor over to Performance Services, who will be our contractor, and talk about how this proposed project meets the needs as described by Ms. Tracy.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see you all this evening. So there are kind of four major goals we're trying to accomplish with this project, and then there's two components. There's Emily had mentioned, to the scope of work. So 4 major components or goals we're trying to hit. Number 1, replace old failing equipment in the building. Most of that equipment is at or past its life expectancy. Improve the learning environment for the students and staff with the HVAC design that will provide that. The units in the classroom will be very similar to what you have at Spernica and Helmsburg, and now at some of the classrooms in the high school. Reduce energy costs, and maybe one of the most important goals, improve security.
HVAC is heat and refrigeration, not everybody has.
Okay, heating, yeah, so I apologize. Heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and I'll get into some of the specifics here in a minute. And then the secure entrance or secure entrance for the middle schools, you know, right now it's on the west side. There's quite a bit of grade there. When you come in, you've got to go upstairs to get to the inside of the building to where the offices and clinic are. The handicap accessibility kind of weaves its way around the entire building. So we're proposing to improve that dramatically with kind of new design. So the first piece, as you had mentioned, a complete mechanical replacement. We're replacing all of the classroom units, all of the air handling units in the building, the chiller, the pumps, the heating and cooling pumps, brand new control system that will match what you have at Spernica and Helmsburg and high school. So you're really kind of getting that, you know, all of your buildings onto one system. So Jimmy can monitor it remotely and really see what's going on if there are issues from the building. So the HVAC is a big component of that. The secure entrance, what we're proposing to do right now, and it's early in the stages. We've met with some of the staff, and we're planning on taking 3 classrooms kind of on that northwest quadrant of the building. That would be the new entrance. We'll create some parking out there, and then we're going to create 2 classrooms in the existing clinic and office area. It's in the interior of the building. And then there's a classroom on the south side of the building that will house that, or I guess, take over that 3rd classroom that we kind of commandeered for the clinic and the administration.
And timeline?
So, you know, there's long lead times on a lot of equipment and so forth. I think that the thought was, construction will start at some level, probably early, or sometime in the spring, early summer next year in 2024. And it will all be completed by the summer of 2024.
That is high school stuff.
Yes, obviously very important.
Yes, all right. All right, anything else?
Not much more questions.
Any questions from the board? All right, thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to hear from our municipal advisor from Baker Tilly. And this is about how the proposed project will be financed, as well as information about the effect that would have on the typical property tax. Thank you, and it's Jay Staley. Thank you.
Great to see you again this evening. Thanks for allowing us to participate in this project. As far as from the financing perspective, we get a copy of the hard copy of this as well, but just a picture of your debt profile. And so each of those colored bars represent the outstanding debt that you have. You have some debt that's going to be falling off in 2024 and even 2027. So as we start planning these out, as far as the way we're getting payments, how we can work to stabilize the tax rate is the goals. So the debt instrument we're looking to utilize is a general obligation bond. So we compared 2023 with 2024 listed on here. So as a school district, you have capacity as far as being able to borrow to utilize the general obligation debt aspect. And so as you can see, you have about $10.5 million. You did experience about 4.7% AD growth. And so for your 2024 number, that goes up a little bit. We're talking about a bond issuance of about $6.1 billion. So I think the biggest takeaway from this is even by issuing this, you still have the ability to issue some additional debt should you need to because of some things that come up with some emergency items that you should get to. As far as the parameters of the bond, again, it was looking at the $6.1 million borrowing amount. The amount available for the project is a little over $5.9 million. $200,000 is kind of its cost of issuance fees at first. If you were taking out a loan, that was closing costs on your home. Similar to those, as well as just being able to sell the product at a discount. Looking to pay it back in a term of 4 years, so we pay back over 4 budget cycles. And as you can see, there will be a 0 taxpayer impact. looking to hold the total tax rate flat. So the total tax rate will not change. There will be some variation within the debt service tax rate, but not within the total. So as you can see, we're looking to have a larger payment next year, and then there will be some smaller payments in the subsequent years. You'll be able to layer in some additional debt as you move forward with other projects. It's the extended financing aspect. So happy to take any questions if you have.
Any questions for the board?
So at this point, we will be opening up to a public hearing. Remember, if you would like to speak, you need to sign in. I think I have one already from Daniel Smith. I'll get to it just as you. Okay, I forgot that. And is it on the bond or is it on something else? Okay. Okay, so we'll do you in the other part of the meeting. So if anyone does want to talk specifically about this project, so this is a project meeting just about this. There are forms back there. If you just bring it up to me, we will go ahead and give you your 3 minutes. We do, again, want to limit comments only to that project and the financing of that. And yeah, so anybody else who's here to talk about the project or bond? Okay, that's easy. We will move on. Thank you all for everyone who is here, to our folks from Performance Services and Baker Tilly. And we do appreciate all of your work so that it helps us do what we need to do. Please note that this is just the first step of our legal process. After this, we will be continuing to work with the administration and our professional advisors to make sure that we are using all the efficiencies we can to conserve our tax dollars and also meeting all of our educational needs. So, Jane, can you summarize the project resolution for us and what we're going to be voting on?
Yes, the first resolution, as you heard, is entitled Project Resolution. It may be Exhibit A in your documents. And it is the document or the resolution that establishes those maximum financial terms that you heard Jay Stanley speak about. So it was the maximum $6,105,000 borrowing amount. There were cost of issuance of the $200,000, leaving them $5,905,000 available for the actual hard and soft construction project. You also heard that overall the tax rate would not be increased, it would be managed. The debt service rate associated with this bond is 0.1186 cents. So that would be the first resolution. We want to call the question on that.
Okay, so we do one at a time. Okay. All right, is there a motion and a second to adopt this project resolution?
So moved. I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Amy,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
All right, how about the preliminary bond resolution?
This resolution is the first one relating to the actual details of the bond itself. So it's anticipated that these bonds will be sold this year. So these are general obligation bonds of 2023. The first payment on interest would be expected in next summer, July 15th of 2024. And then the longest time you can take to repay this is January 15th, 2028. Again, it could come down, it could shorten up a little bit depending on interest rates. There'll be some notices that will be put in the newspaper after this meeting, and we'll have more action for the board at your October meeting.
Right. Is there a motion and a second to adopt the preliminary bond resolution?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, let's do the roll call.
Amy,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
All right, and Jane, will you summarize the reimbursement resolution?
Last resolution, this is basically a placeholder. So under federal tax law, if you decide that you want to pay out of any of your own funds to start some of the work early before we have the bond actually issued, this just reserves your ability to reimburse the school for anything to pay out in advance.
Is there a motion and second to adopt the reimbursement resolution?
I so move.
Second. Any discussion? All right, let's do roll call.
Amy,
Yes?
Carol,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
Right, thank you, appreciate it. At this time, I'm going to adjourn the project hearing, and as I said, thank you all for coming. Pass this down. Thank you, Jane, Steve,
Feel free to
Jane.
leave. You can stay for the rest of the meeting. Feel free to leave. Thank you.
I think they've done this before. All right. We are gonna close that chapter and thanks, guys. Now we're gonna move on to our regular board meeting. So I'm gonna, I was gonna say, I'm gonna call us to order again for the general meeting at 6:46. And are there any modifications to the agenda?
Yeah, there are just two in reference to the Brown County High School ECA positions for 2023-2024. And Janae McGill, junior class sponsor, and Rebecca Bryan for Bring Change to Mind. They have decided not to take those positions this year, so we just struck them.
And there's no replacements yet then?
No.
All right, is there a motion and a second to accept the modifications?
So moved.
Right, any discussion? Let's do roll call.
Amy,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
All right, number 3 is a recognition of visitors and comments from the audience. So as I mentioned before, I have Daniel Smith here who says that he wanted to speak this evening, and I'll just, we do generally just actually set a timer to make sure that we are fair to everybody. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and you can start whenever you're ready.
I've got a mile of notes here I'm not gonna get through, so, I will stay as long as anybody would want to talk about anything after this meeting. My name's Daniel Smith. I'm a Columbus firefighter. I'm very frustrated. Don't hold it together. A father of 3 in the school corporation, a current middle school cross-country coach, a former middle school track coach. My wife and I were fired from track in spring, and we were lied to about why we were fired. And that's evident in today's agenda because I'm in. We were fired because we were not staff members, what we were told, which is a lie. I'm being replaced by somebody that's not a staff member. There's dozens of non-staff members that coach in the school. I'm only going to touch on this a little. Steve Fisher is an absolutely wonderful man, and he will do a great job. No complaints there. He will be an asset to this program. I work somewhere that things like integrity, honor, honesty matter. And those things don't seem apparent here. Things like complacency, indifference. My daughter spoke up about an inappropriate situation in the school last year. And she applied for a program to get into this year. And all of her friends of common academic standing made it, and she did not. First day of school, she was told last year she made it in. And I don't have no formal letter, so I don't know exactly how that was communicated. It was not on her schedule. She went to the office the first day of school. They told her she would have to talk to the teacher involved. The teacher involved blew her off over and over again, told her he didn't know, he doesn't make the decisions. She's asked 7 times probably. I've called the office. I've left voicemails on 2 or 3 occasions. My wife, who asked me to be good down here today, I'm trying my best. My wife talked to Mr. Steele in person, told him I had left messages and I needed to be, he got to talk to me. Nobody will respond. We've got parents on the cross-country team that have concerns that they've called the school about, written emails. Nobody will respond. My daughter feels like she has a target on her back in her school. It's sad. You wonder why the referendum didn't pass. All the public comments I heard from staff members were just scorning the taxpayers and calling them stupid because they didn't understand. Because the public and the taxpayers have lost their faith. It's things like this that frustrated people.
I have to say that the alarm has come off. Appreciate your coming, sharing your frustrations.
I'll talk to anybody as long as they want.
We watch it like that. We have it done.
You would want me to do that.
All right, are there any other comments from the audience? Okay. We're gonna move on to number 4, which is our presentation from Dawn Ray. And she's gonna tell us about the budget.
Hello. So every year we get together and talk about our budget for the next year. Unfortunately, the budget, the way we do it with the state, does not coincide with the school year. So the state does budgets that are January through December, which kind of, it makes things a little fun when you're trying to deal with school year budget and our calendar year budget. So all this information is going to be what will be in our 2024 budget, which is January through December 2024. So tonight we're going to cover 3 things: the actual budget, which is all of our regular funds that we use, and then we have a capital projects plan and a bus replacement plan. All 3 of these are required legislatively for every governmental unit. So this is kind of a review of what we are looking for next year. Okay. All right, so funding overview. We get our money from lots of different sources. Our education fund, all of that money that comes into that fund is provided by the state. There is a calculation, they have very specific calculations. It is driven by our ADN. So the number of students K through 12 that we have that attend our school district, okay? So the last time that we had an official count, we were at 1,546. That was last February. There will be another one coming up beginning of October 2nd, okay? So that will affect and adjust what our state money will be through the first half of our school year. And then there will be one done in February that will affect the second half. They're all rectified back on the very particular scale. So if you have any questions, just holler about that. Our operations fund. That is the money that is derived from property taxes. So our homeowners, our business owners, that money comes into our operations fund, and that takes care of those needs from that fund. We have every governmental unit in the state is given a 4% increase for 2024. The amounts of the increases are determined by the state. There is a max growth quotient. So for 2024, it's 4%. So we will take the levy, which is the cash that we get in from our property taxes, and what we were certified for 2023, we can grow that 4%, and that determines how much money we can get for 2024. Our projected circuit breaker, just a reminder, a circuit breaker is the money of property tax that we ask for and we're allowed to ask for, but we will not get because some particular homeowners, business owners, landowners, things like that, if they are asked to pay more than what the state mandate is by the amount or by the type of land and everything that they own. So that gets into a whole can of worms. We won't have to open that today. But one thing to note is our circuit breaker amount is very low. We are very, very fortunate. We have about $5,400. Our debt service fund. So tonight we talked about getting, adding on another debt service to kind of replace things that have fallen off. So debt service, this is our lease payments and our general obligation bonds. We're adding on the general obligation bond. Everything that is raised to go money into that debt service fund is needs driven. I'll get into that in a little bit, but it only looks at what are we supposed to be paying back out to the bank when we take our loan, just like if you have a car payment, you gotta pay your car payment all the time. On debts, we pay twice a year, and it's based on the amount that we have to pay back the financial institution for the amounts that we have borrowed. And we also have a very specific amount that we're allowed to have as our little reserve. It's very, very small, but it's okay, it gets us by. There's been a lot of talk about assessed value because AVs all over the entire state have really increased. I just want to put a little snapshot together for everybody. Going back from 2017 to 2023, you kind of see the differences there. A little chart, it's like it wasn't that bad, and all of a sudden AVs just really started to grow. So that kind of gives you an idea of the values of all of the properties, everything that pays property tax within the entire county. This is Brown County Schools specific. Those are our AVs. We did have our 2024 came in. I believe that Jay Staley had this number in his presentation as well, the 1.872. I just did kind of a 5-year growth. 5-year growth is 42.83%. Holy cow. But like I said, they've grown all over the place.
Yeah, and the school board really doesn't have any say so on.
You
The
have
assessment
nothing to
of
do.
property.
That is the county assessor.
Yes.
So the county assessor, they have assessors that work with them.
Yeah.
There is state formulas. There's prescribed ways that they can look at the property, what all is on it, how much is there, are there improvements? There's so many things. So all of that is determined 100% by the county. We have nothing to do with it, but we wait till that magic number comes out and then we use that in our calculations.
And also, that's only on 49% of the land in this county.
49%. Very low. Okay, so our budget amounts, these are the amounts that we are asking the state to spend. Okay, so our education fund, we've got 13.6 million. Debt service fund, the amount in the debt service fund is increased right now because we have anticipated debt. So what they had the presentation on tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to put our anticipated payment high and wait till it comes in official before the end of the year. And then I'll allow the state to bring us down to what we're actually going to be paying out. So that is why that number is a little bit inflated right now. Operations fund, 7.18. Rainy day, we're going to go ahead and what we've traditionally done is around $1 million, just to keep it to where if we need to use the rainy day fund, if we have an emergency, we have the money already appropriated. Because remember, we cannot spend our money unless the state tells us we can spend our money, which is through appropriations. That's exactly what this budget process is. So our total budget, about 27.4. Okay. You may remember that transitioning from 2018 to 2019, legislation came up with this new way of how to do all of our funds. In other words, what buckets do we put things into? So in the top, you see general, capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement. Those used to be individual funds that we had. Then all of a sudden legislation changed and they said, we're going to take all these, we're going to kind of move them around and you're going to get 2 of them. You're going to get education and operations. So I have a little demonstration because things were not completely just one or the other. So if you watch this, the first thing that moves is part of our general fund. There are some things that went over to operations. So the things that went over to operations, if you were not aware, everybody, basically, if you're not a teacher, you can't get paid out of education. So your principals, your administrators, things like that, those come out of operations. And then we had a lot of them that were left and other items that went into education. So if you see, there's part of the split right there. The next thing, our capital projects, there's a little bit that went to education, and the rest of it went over to operations. Kind of a way to think about it for capital projects, things that went to education are things that are affecting the kids. their technology, their things that they need to use. So if it's classroom and kid related, with education. All the other went to operations. On transportation, all the operations, all that went over there. And then our bus replacement, which is what we're buying buses, that went over to operations as well. So you can see the state kind of did a little switcheroo on some of these things. So because of this, because things didn't go clear from one to the other, the state recommends that each school district transfer no more than 15% of the state money that we get into education fund from education to operations. And the reason is because some of those expenditures got flipped over. So because of that, we can go no more than 15% per year of the actual state revenue that we get into education. We can transfer no more than 50% from education into operations to help cover those costs. Now, we historically have not done that. We can't afford to do that. And one big thing is with that referendum gone, oh my goodness. Lynn and I haven't sat down and done the hard number crunching, but I just don't see how this is going to be able to be done. So this is one thing that we really are being very watchful on. There's also some new shifts that were not shown in that. If people have paid attention, there were things in the news about the legislation where it says the state is going to pay for all the textbooks. Parents don't have to pay for textbooks anymore. Well, here's the thing is the state gives us some of the money, but not all of it. So now we have to figure out where are we going to pay for the rest of it? Because obviously the children need all of their items for school. It needs done. So that's where we're going to have to kind of be creative and figure out what's going to come from where. We're still in the reporting process, still in the calculation process. We are nowhere near knowing what that impact is going to be, but that's another thing to take into consideration. Okay, so debt service. Remember I said that the amount that we're allowed to levy, in other words, ask for money, is dependent on what we have to pay. These are the dollar amounts that we are going to be paying out of our debt service fund for 2024. First are our lease payments. We have two leases currently. The total is $2.197 million. Bond payments, these are the ones that we already have. Of those, $439,000. Unreimbursed textbook, there's a zero. We used to be able to ask for a small amount of levy to cover some of the expenses that we had to cover ourselves for textbooks. So if we had families that were all charged their textbook and course fees, things like that, and they were not able to pay them for one reason or another. If those families, if they couldn't, then we had to find a way the state would allow schools to fund some of it through their debt service. For next year, we are no longer allowed to do that. So that's more that we have to look and see, how are we going to fund this? How are we going to cover those expenditures? Because my goodness, obviously we're going to get those things for those kids because they need them. So that will no longer be in there. Our new general obligation bond, we are guesstimating, Baker Tilly is guesstimating around $3 million for payments for next year. I think you saw Jay's chart, high payment next year and then going down. If we pay it in condensed payments, we won't pay as much interest. So the reason that we are allowed to have a little bit higher next year is because we had debt that retired, that fell off. So we're replacing what we already had. So that way there won't be any increases. Total debt service payment around 5.65. By the way, these are the amounts that are advertised and will adopt. Once the GO bond closes before the end of the year, we will close on it. We will have official numbers. I will send all of that to the state, to the DLGF. They go through and they adjust all those numbers down to what the real numbers are. But when we advertise and adopt, we have to advertise and adopt up and above, because if I only put in there 2 million and we're supposed to pay 3 million next year, that extra million, well, honestly on debt service, they will fund it. But if it was something else and we needed to increase, you're not allowed to increase. After you advertise, you cannot increase anymore, especially after you adopt, you can't increase anymore. So that's a big thing to remember. Our levy, these are dollar amounts. So if you look at education fund, zero levy. Remember, education fund, the money there comes from the state. Debt service fund, we are guesstimating high, we'll wait till we get the real numbers in, and the state will bring us down. 5.75 million. What the state does to determine how much levy, in other words, property tax money that needs to go to take care of that. They look at the payments that we're paying in 2024, and then they look at the first half of 2025, and we only get 15%. It's like our little extra cushion, just to have a little bit of cash balance. So it's very limited, very small. Like I said, those are brought back down once the state receives the real numbers from us. When they go through, before they certify our budget, they bring everything back down to realistic. Operations fund, we're going to advertise and adopt a little bit above that 4% and allow the state again to bring us back down. And that way we capture everything. Rainy day, we can never levy for rainy day. Anything that goes into rainy day has to be left over from our existing funds that we can put into there. So we never, ever can levy for rainy day. For a total of 11.5. Now, this gives us a screenshot of what our advertised and adopted levy rates have been, and then what actuals. So we advertise and adopt high, and we let the state bring us back down. If you look back through this, sometimes it was very significant, like back in 2016, they advertised 1.2295 and were brought down to 0.5697. So sometimes there were huge differences. Last year, 0.7902 advertised, and our current rate, this is what is going into the calculations for the people in this county to pay their property taxes. This is what our current rate is right now. Our advertised for 2024 is 0.7243. Broken down, this is how it is. 3631 for operations, 3612 for debt service. And like I said, those will be brought down according to what our maximum allowable are. But this just kind of gives you an idea. It's historic. This is the way that every government unit does it. They always advertise and adopt above and let the state bring you down to your maximum amount. Do we have any comments or questions about any of the just the regular budgeting? Something else for you after this. Something else fun. Okay, nothing on that? All right. So we have two plans. We have a capital improvement plan, and we have a bus replacement plan that we are required to do for the state. So our capital improvement plan, basically you're looking at things that will affect the building, technology, and safety equipment, like our capital items, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna advertise availability for all buildings. That way we're covered. But majority of the project, everything that's gonna happen is pretty much what is gonna be occurring with our general obligation bond. So you guys have already pretty much made those determinations as to what really does need to happen during calendar year 2024. But I'm gonna go ahead and advertise the costs up well up and above 6 million. This doesn't affect any money that we get in. This doesn't affect anything. So, but these are things that we have to show that we have needs. Do we have needs here at Brown County Schools? Yes, we do. So this is part of that requirement. Our bus replacement plan. On September 9th, you already approved for 2 buses to be purchased this year. What we're looking at with this is 2024. And for this year, you approved, the estimated total was about 224,000, 225,000. I'm going to go ahead and build in the future need of 400 just up and above to show that, yes, we still need to be purchasing buses. We need to do some things. One thing that Dennis, our transportation director, he keeps, it's great. This is kind of a spreadsheet of the buses that we have. And when they, according to state recommendations, could be replaced. So as you see, in 23, we have quite a few up here. But the thing is Dennis and his crew do an amazing job with keeping our buses mechanically safe. He is very responsible with making sure, how to strategically place the buses on different routes according to how long is it, what kind of roads, what's the need, and keeping track of how many kids are on all these different routes. So even though we have this, it goes by state recommendation, we're not going to have to do all of this on the units that they're putting. This just kind of gives you an idea of what we have. And not every single one of these are full-size buses. Dennis, the C's are full-size. What are those?
The E's are your little white buses. The A's are smaller buses, and start type buses.
Okay. Any questions or comments about either the capital improvement or the bus replacement? I know it's a lot. All right, just in summary, we will have our next two meetings. The first meeting in October, we will have our public hearing on the actual budget. So we will be able to take public comment at that meeting. And then on our second meeting in October on the 16th, we will adopt. And after that, I will finalize everything within the portal, the state portal, and submit everything to the state. And it shouldn't be long after that that we end up closing on our general obligation bond, where we have all of those final figures for our lovely DLGF rep to go through and to work all our figures and come back with some hard numbers. Typically, we will have them right before the end of the year, our certified budget. So the deadline is December 31st. With Brown County being a smaller county, it's a little bit easier because we don't have like cross-county units where like it's partially in Brown, partially in Bartholomew, and things like that. So a lot of times we get pushed towards the top of the stack and we get done with our numbers quick, which I like that. We will have our tax rate should hold steady. Obviously, it should actually increase. And with that will actually even out well with the AV increasing, the tax rate decreases. The amount of money that a taxpayer is going to pay isn't going to be that much different. One thing to think of is we don't have a referendum anymore. So that makes a big difference that we don't have that 8 cents out of there. We do have collective bargaining with the teachers coming up in the fall. So it's kind of an unknown moving piece because when we have increases in salary, we have to just do projections. And so we build it in the budget as a projected amount. We will have those meetings in the fall that will determine for the 23-24 school year. Anybody has any questions? My door's always open. There's my contact info. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, thanks, Dawn. Any questions before we move on? Well, thank you. You do a great job of making that understandable. Those of us who don't do numbers as our primary job, so thank you. And I think for the public as well, so. All right, next is number 5. This is a discussion item on our community engagement survey, and I think this is with Emily.
Yeah, and Dawn, thank you for staying up there and looking through. I don't know if we can zoom in to maybe make that text a little bit bigger for those in the audience. I don't have paper copies. Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk through this survey. The board has charged me with getting some feedback and reaching out to the community in the form of a survey since we failed the referendum last November. So there's been a lot of talk, and I hear a lot of people out in the community. I even had someone ask me about it being on the ballot for this November. And that is not true. It's important to remember that we are just in the information seeking period to see really what the community values and what they would like to see for Brown County schools moving forward with a potential referendum on a future ballot. So this is the first page. I think it's also important to note that a paper copy of this survey will go in every mailbox in the county. On this paper copy is also a QR code. So people in the community will have the opportunity to either scan the QR code and take the survey digitally like that. If there's another person in the household, they can also scan that QR code and take it. So you could have more than one person in each household take the survey. But if there is somebody that would feel more comfortable doing the survey in paper form, there will be a self-addressed envelope that comes with it, and they can send it in. Another thing to note that none of the data comes back to me or the board or anybody here within Brown County Schools. This is a third-party vendor that is putting this together and handling all of the data. They will also be the ones analyzing the data. And then I believe it is somewhere in December that they will make a formal presentation of the data to the school board. And if the board decides to put something to pass a resolution to put a referendum on a future ballot for May, that timeline has to happen around January. So the board will have ample time to be able to digest the data, to make a final decision of what would potentially be on the May ballot. So those are the logistics. We have a tentative timeline. I believe that if it all, the timeline stays true to form, the goal is for this survey to be out sometime between the last week of October and before Thanksgiving break. So that would be the time period to collect the data, or that people would fill out the survey. Yeah, the second page really is just collecting. We want to know the demographics. We want to know if people filling out this survey has a primary residence within the county, which township that they live in. Are they an employee? Do they have children attending the school district? And then a couple engagement questions of how would you like to receive district information or communication, and there's options for them to choose. And then on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you recommend district to a friend or family member? Again, those are just 2 engagement questions. We did put some information in here about some financial background. We have a graph in here that shows where Brown County school tax rate is, the entire school tax rate. So ours is, which we just learned from Dawn and Jay, that ours is 0.5787. You can see these are schools that are around us, and then you can see where the state average is. And Brown County is actually the 8th lowest school tax rate in the state. So this is just really good information that I don't think people know or understand or realize. You know, I get questions about, well, is it fair to really compare the school tax rate for Brown County next to Columbus or Monroe, because they're 2 giant school districts? Well, it is different. They're not small rural school districts, but at the end of the day, the tax rate still means the same for them as it does for us. We get less of a tax rate, which means we receive less funding. We have less kids, we receive less funding. We lose kids, right? We're losing kids to these school districts. We're losing our teachers to these school districts. Their school tax rate is almost double. So this is one of those comparisons that it doesn't matter if it's a large school district versus a small rural. We pay a very low school tax rate.
Well, the one small district right there, Edinburgh.
Oh, yeah. And they just passed their referendum.
Pass the
last year.
referendum. Yeah.
And Monroe's going for another referendum.
Yes, they're gonna ask me for another update.
Yeah, in Columbus is in the information seeking stage for a capital referendum to be able to do some facility things. So they will all, if they go after it and pass it, they will also have 2.
And I want to go back to Carol's point, I think earlier, when we look at that tax rate of 0.57, that's not on every acre of land in Brown County, because what you're referring to is that much of our land in Brown County is state and national forests, or owned by the state and national government. And I don't know the exact number, but
It's 51%.
yeah, about 51% is not taxed. So not only do we have it, we're only getting taxes at a very low rate on 50% of our, and that's one of the reasons that I think we struggle more than other school districts that don't have, they're getting taxes on more acres. So that's how I think about it as well.
So, I guess because of the outcome of the referendum last November, we're listening to the community. At the end of the day, these are still a huge impact to Brown County schools of not having this current referendum. So we're trying to gauge feedback or receive input from the community on what is it that they understand, don't understand, what would they fund, what do they value. So the first part of this funding plan is to explain renewing the current referendum. The current referendum is at 8 pennies for every $100 of assessed value. If we were to be able to renew just those 8 pennies, we would stay status quo. Remember, 7 pennies is able to pay for wages and benefits for all employees. 1 penny is to fund the Career Resource Center and adult education. So this is a simple question of would you support renewing the current referendum to be able to maintain our program services and compensation? And highlighted in yellow, approval does not increase the tax rate over the current level. It is what we have right now. That second paragraph just reiterates that 1 penny of that 8 pennies is dedicated to the Career Resource Center and adult education. We also want to know in that next box at the top there, do you support renewing that 1 penny for the adult education? Again, approving that does not increase the school tax rate. It is just renewing what we currently have.
So I guess the part the part at the bottom is just probably just a printing on this draft. So the bottom of the 1 page goes with the blue box at the top of the next one. I wasn't catching that until just now.
Yeah. And so that's renewing the current. And then we have the additional funding. And we put this in here because we want to know if the community would support adding any pennies to those 8 pennies to be able to be competitive with Columbus and with Bloomington or Monroe County in being able to pay our teachers and our staff higher wages. So if we could expand the staff compensation plan by putting us on par with our nearby districts, would you support expanding by 2 pennies for every $100? So that would be a total of 10 pennies based on last year's median home value. That is an additional $1.63 a month. I have gotten some feedback that, okay, so the 8 is minimum, it's status quo, it keeps us exactly where we're at right now for the time being. The 2 pennies gives us additional monies to be able to try to be competitive with Bloomington and Columbus, which may suffice for a couple years. Not sure if it would suffice inflation and growth over an entire 8 years. Is there an opportunity here for an additional box or an open-ended box that says, what would you support above and beyond the 10 cents to keep us competitive?
Well, I mean, I think that's an important point for people to understand. We say this is the 8 cents would keep us the same, but our expenses continue to grow. And we are going to have to continue to increase just with cost of living for all of our staff. So I don't know that I understand that we talked about it in terms of the tax rate keeping at the current level, but it really is not going to meet our needs for the next 8 years. I mean, we've had projections that tell us that. So I know we're not wordsmithing, but I guess, I want to say that keeping it at the current level really does not meet our needs over 8 years. And then again, it's my suggestion that we add another box here that says either open-ended, how much would you support, or make another suggestion you'd be interested in 5 cents or 10 cents or whatever that number would be. So we don't have a number in our heads about how much we're looking for. I'm just saying, I think there are people in our community who would support more than 2 cents, and I don't want to cut ourselves short. And I also want to make sure that 2 cents, making it 8 cents to 10 cents, will that really sustain us over the next 10 years or next 8 years with inflation and cost of living, or make us competitive? So those are concerns I have, and I've shared those with Emily, but I was going to share those with the public. You guys have any comments on this survey?
Oh, you're not that question.
And then, yeah.
Okay.
And then you can-
Yeah, that's
Yes,
what I'm done or?
I just thought at that point, let's just see, are there any questions about that part of the survey? Okay.
I think it's important to also note that there is an opportunity for the community to come back and say, definitely not support any of it. And if that's the case, then I believe that we need feedback on the cost cutting options. And okay, so if we don't support an operating referendum to help us, where do you propose that Brown County Schools makes these cuts? So, there are several that are listed. There's a few examples, underneath each one. Yeah, it's not a great page, but at the end of the day, the board really does have a decision to make. If the feedback comes back different than what we hope, then we've got to take some action. So at least we will have some input or some data on where we might choose to do that and which one becomes priority. That is the survey. I wanted real quick before we opened it up, again, to review just a tentative timeline. I would like to be able to bring a finalized survey to the board on October 2nd. And then if we are good to go on October 2nd, we would send off to the printers again. October 30th, we would hope that surveys land physically in the mailboxes. And then the deadline would be the 17th of November, so right before Thanksgiving. That gives School Perceptions, who is the vendor, time to be able to compile the data and then make a presentation, a formal presentation to the board in December. And then January and February, the board will make a decision if they would like to move forward with May of 2024. So now, do you have a question?
Oh, so it looks like we don't ask like 4 cents. We only ask up to 2 cents. Because in 1 cent, extra 1 cent will go CRC, extra 1 cent will go to early childhood. Looks like that you kind of
We did. We decided, we made the decision to take early childhood off of the survey and then off of a future potential referendum. At this time, we just believe that this program is sustainable as our enrollment and decided not to ask for that on the referendum.
all right.
So really, we have a proposed spending plan of 2 things, and then the 2 things that we have currently right now. And one is to be able to provide wages and benefits competitive with our neighbors for all staff, and then to be able to provide support to this Career Resource Center and adult ed.
That's right. So still, for instance, I get 1 cent. So basically, we are just only asking for the competitiveness, that not just status quo. That's what only, so 8 cents or 10 cents. That's what we're going to ask.
I think I'm gonna go back to the vendor based on the feedback and ask
Okay.
them to add an additional box that's either open-ended or puts out, maybe it's 12 cents, maybe it's 15 cents, or whatever they would recommend wording in the survey to see if people would be, or they would support going above 10 cents.
So this survey, you think the public can be expressed, okay, you know what, I'd be happy to support more than this.
Yeah, that's what we wanna know.
That's kind of the purpose of the survey.
I even want to know, do they support continuing maintaining status quo, maybe giving us just a little bit more, or we would do
More
what it
than that
takes,
more, okay.
yeah, to be competitive.
I see.
And then if they don't support any of that, where do they propose we cut? So,
I think it's important for them to know that we will
Also,
have.
I think that's right. If you don't support us,
No,
our children suffer this way.
I mean,
right.
not in a threatening way, but
Yeah, I think
Just-
that's a good idea.
it's pretty black and white. Yeah, it's black and white.
Yeah.
Some things are.
at the end of the
And what
day,
are
it's
their priorities?
$1.2 million
Yeah,
a year, so.
I think I just learned by engaging this, I don't know how many people really know when we lose referendum, we lose 1.2 million. And probably we're gonna start writing on the newspaper, letter to editor. But I think we need to have a little sticker, without referendum, she's go without 1.2 million. I think it should be more publicly shared, honestly. I mean, I'm one of the really few Brown County people that knows. And whenever I go to meeting, we lose 1.2 million a year. But we need to really more, kind of make a stick or something, this is kind of.
I think it's hard with school financing numbers. These are numbers we don't deal with in our daily lives.
Yeah.
And so I don't, a 1.2 million, 27 million. You know, it's hard for us to like even conceptualize that, and I think that's why school finance is so hard for us to explain. I always say, if I could sit down with every single voter and explain this, I think we'd pass a referendum, and I would love to do that, but I can't. So how do we get this in simple language so that people can understand it? And that's sort of what the survey is it is both a question, do you support the referendum at all, for a small amount, for more? And then secondly, you know, if you don't support it, what do you think we ought to do? And that's what we really want to know from the.
So another thing we can approach is that we need this amount of money. This amount to pay teacher and all these things. That's how we need to come up. We have to, that's what this much how we need. That's what we need from you. I mean, that could be good blueprint, just number. This is what we need. We need minimum or good pay. This
I'm
one,
telling you, I need a minimum of 8
minimum, yeah,
cents.
minimum. That's right.
I can get by with 10 cents. I have to have 8 cents.
That's right. That's right. It's a must. That's right.
It's $1.2 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments from the audience?
I'll make a comment on that. I think part of the issue there is that the language being used is like we need to spoon feed everybody like kindergartners. I think they do understand it. And I don't think there's a lot of confidence that people think that what they're funding is being well used and it's not being efficiently used. And I don't think they feel like if they give the money, that money is that their kids are going to benefit from it. I don't think people believe that.
You're in specific things that they think we're misspending money on, or
I think just along with
when you.
I work for a government agency
Sure.
also, and I think government agencies have a bad reputation for being inefficient. And I think when people go somewhere and they see where their money's going and then they have a very poor experience, it's really hard for them to feel like they should get more.
Sure.
Now, I understand the reflection on kids, and I don't think the people in this community, I think they would give everything to the kids they can to do what's right for them if they felt like that's what was happening. I think I know a lot of people in this corporation, a lot of people in this county. I live here. There is a lack of confidence that the money would be spent in a way that their kids would benefit from.
So how do you think we should be spending it differently? As a sample taxpayer?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think the main thing is that we have this is a long conversation.
I'm gonna shorten you a little bit, so.
Right. I know she wasn't on the timer. And I was.
That's okay. Well, a different part of the meeting,
But if you go anywhere in your daily life and spend money on something and you leave there feeling like you didn't get what you paid for, you don't want to go back. And my wife and I are currently looking for a better school corporation to send our kids to. I've had 10 conversations with staff members in this school corporation about it and have gotten 0 answers about why we should stay here, why this is the best place for our kids. Part of that's because they don't have a good answer. Part of that's because they don't care. Just don't care. That's why we're losing a lot of staff members. The good staff members we have are looking for someplace else.
well, and one of the reasons they are is because we can't pay the same wages as our neighboring school
I
districts.
understand.
And that is what this so that's the chicken and the egg,
Well,
right? Do you want to
That's the
stay
argument.
here because we have good staff and teachers who are making salaries that are competitive and want to be here? But if we can't compete with those other folks, it is a morale issue as well. And I think that's probably what you're hearing. I've heard many staff members who are very happy to be here and are very, feel very good and are very interested in the kids and will give you a different answer. So I understand that's your experience, but I don't know that is a universal experience.
well,
And part of the goal of this is to solve those problems. So denying the referendum only exacerbates those problems. It doesn't.
Can I ask one quick question?
sure.
Looks like your problem is communication problem.
There's a lot of communication.
Communication, work. So that's something that, it's not communication that necessarily calls to the school. I think that is something that, we need to kind of have a separate conversation and, to make that part improve. Definitely. I mean, is a communication is always problem, communication, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we can deny the quality of the school education that quality education is providing. So, so I think it's great. I really appreciate you commenting that, because it's all probably, communication is not only your problem, everybody's problem.
Sure, that's, thank you, Claire. I appreciate that. So,
It doesn't stop there. And if we could argue about which came first, right? We could have that argument all day, the chicken and the egg
Yeah.
argument.
okay, so I think we can all go, very good. I appreciate both of your perspectives and, you know, that's why we're doing the survey, so we can have those conversations. And people who want to engage with us on those issues, you know, we're here to listen. We have emails and phone numbers and, you know, we are happy to talk to the public. And I know Emily has an open door. So please, if folks, you know, want to talk about those things, we're happy to share. And if somebody says, hey, I want to see your budget, I think you're being inefficient, we're an open book. And we do believe that we are, I mean, believe me, we are doing the best we can with the amount of money we have. And so any inefficiencies that were ever there are not there today because we've had to cut since about 2016.
It's also about the quality of the product.
Thank you very much. All right, any other questions or comments from the board? Emily, anything else?
Nope, we will, I have a meeting, maybe Wednesday, it's either tomorrow or Wednesday with school perception, so I'll give that feedback back to them and then, push it out to the board.
I'm really excited about this. I think this is exactly what we need. We always say, we don't do polls in Brown County. So how do we know what people feel? And it's often anecdotal. And so this is an opportunity through a vendor to do an anonymous, well-researched study. So I'm really excited to see how that goes and whatever conversation. So thank you all. All right, so there's no vote there. We're just going to move on to number 6. Approval of the public session minutes from September 5th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve? Any discussion? Let's do a roll call.
Amy,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Vicky, yes, Stephanie,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
All right, number 7 is our action needed items, which is none. Number 8 is our consent agenda items for personnel, starting with separations and appointments. That starts with Brown County Middle School 6th grade girls basketball coach Dave Bartlett, who's separating effective September 14th, 2023, and goes on to page 3 through no transfers and a pop festival sponsor for the high school, Allie. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing someone's name.
You got it.
All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items? So moved. Is there a second?
Also,
Any discussion? All right, let's do a roll call.
Amy,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Vicky,
yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
All right, superintendent's report.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of updates tonight, so I will keep it brief and short. Friday is our second ambassador meeting. It will be held at promptly 8:30 in the Goldberg Room. This session is titled "The Business of Educating Kids." So Don Ray will get to come and do a presentation on Public School Finance 101. Dennis will be here to talk about transportation across the county and our district. Don Heimer will be here to talk about food service. Jim Jackson will be here to talk about our facilities across the district. We're going to do a little bit of myth busting. And I just always look forward to this day of the month. Truly one of my favorites. And this particular session is always a favorite of our ambassadors because I just think they learn so much. So I'm looking forward to the ambassador meeting. Also, we hope to have sent to the printers on Wednesday our next Eagle Eye, which is our quarterly magazine. So it is our back to school feature, although it is almost the end of September.
It is something to write about.
We needed something to write about. We have a feature of all of our new staff members. So that's really cool to be in there. There's an article about 6th grade academy. We've got, we're highlighting our teacher and staff members of the year from last year. Yeah, it's just filled with a lot of great stuff. So excited to get that pushed out. And then finally tonight, we held our TED Ed lead team meeting today. And I know the last time that we had talked with this initiative to bring TED Talks and TEDx to Brown County schools, if you remember, each one of our facilities has been approved to be a TED Ed school. So those clubs will officially kick off in the next couple of weeks, right when we get back from fall break. But we had applied to be able to host or hold our own TEDx event at the end of the school year. And initially the application got turned down and they told us they just stopped licensing school districts as a whole. And it would have to be like a high school only or a completely different route. And I will tell you the power of finding the yes and a relentless pursuit to not just accept a no. People at TED Ed have heard that our application got denied. They held separate meetings with TEDx, and then I got asked to be a part of a TEDx meeting, and they told us they made an exception for Brown County schools. So it's a big deal. It's the only K-12 public education district in the state of Indiana that's going to be able to offer this to our kids and our community members on a platform like TEDx. So although it's a big undertaking, that team is so excited to get started. And we should look forward to that about mid-May. That's all I got.
All right. Last is our claims. Is there a motion to approve the claims?
Second.
Any discussion? Let's do roll call.
Amy?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Vicky? Yes. Stephanie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Right, and last thing on the agenda is a board update. Is there anything anyone wants to share?
I'll get new tires on my car, drive if Amy's not good, if Amy's plans and all. Somebody said to me, this is what you need. Got it.
We are going to, there's a statewide school board association meeting next Monday and Tuesday. So as many of us who can get away from our regular daily lives are going to be there. And that is always a really, I find it really regenerative to meet with other school board people and talk to people about what's happening in other districts and give us a lot of new ideas. So we're excited to go do that. So we're going to head up to Indy to do that. Anything else? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second?